the very first episode, you said something like, "Oh, Karishma doesn't always read directions." And I was like, "Oh, we're in for it with this team." Talk to me about your prep a little bit, preparing for that.
Well, we we are very different in our personality types. Like I'm very type A, like type A to a like an extreme. Like my room is organized. I'm very like detail oriented with my job full time. So like, and Krishma's more of like the free spirit, like go with the flow, like very go go go. And I think there are pros and cons to both personality types. And so I think definitely can be beneficial in the race, but in the first leg, I was like, oh dear God, she's not even reading the clue. And it's like leg one of the race. One of the preparations that we had was like, obviously, like from a physical aspect, you want to train, but the mental piece, I think, is quite literally the most important. Like you have to read carefully. That is, I think, the main reason why people go home. One of the biggest flaws is they're not reading the instructions carefully and they're not following through. So I think that was something that was missing a little bit, but it's okay.
Yes. Well, talk to me. We got this adorable edit of you guys driving in this episode. What was your plan? Were Did she learn to drive stick for the race? You were going to navigate?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I have to give a shout out. So, my childhood best friends, like my childhood best friends, their grandfather taught Karishma how to drive stick shift. And we obviously we couldn't share what we were doing, but we were like, oh, she's moving to Switzerland and like we need help, like learning how to drive stick. I took two lessons as backup, but she took a lot of lessons to make sure she knew how to drive. And then obviously was the navigator. But I was really proud of her. That's not easy to do. And I think as a viewer, it's very quick to make assumptions like, oh my God, she didn't learn or she didn't take lessons when she did take lessons. And in fact, like that scene was really quick. It was only like a 5 minute mishap, but of course it's like it's drawn out. But she did a great job driving stick. I was really proud of her.
Yeah, it's tough learning. You're in a whole different country. It's completely different. The cars are different,
It's different. The roads, the lanes, you have cameras. Like there's a lot of other factors that I think people don't realize. You also don't have a GPS. Like I'm navigating with a map. I was pretty proud of myself, if I'm being honest.
Yes. So obviously you talked about your different skill sets. So choosing who's going to do a roadblock becomes pretty tricky here. Did you
Yes.
guys plan to alternate or were you really just trying to go with your gut?
We definitely, it's interesting because um, I think in the last episode, I was teeter tottering doing it because I said, what if it's building? And then I hesitated when she said, well, can you ride a skateboard? What if it's riding a skateboard? And immediately my gut was like, I don't know. Like she grew up skateboarding and I didn't. So then, I think a big part of the race is trusting your gut. And jokingly, like at the end of the race, we were laughing because I think every single roadblock we should have swapped. Every single one we should have swapped. She could have done the coffee beans, I could have done the lassos, she could have done the makeup, I should have done the puzzle. I love puzzles. I love building things. I used to have board game nights with my friends when I lived in LA. Um, and like I live in New York now, and like, I was telling Janice earlier, like my furniture in my room, I built all my furniture in my room. So, you can't have you have it's hard to have like hindsight, but in the moment it's frustrating. But when you look back, like you obviously did your best, you tried your hardest, and you really don't know what to expect. Like curveballs are thrown, and you just have to accept it and do your best.
We saw an emotional moment in last week's episode where you weren't sure where the firefighters were,
Oh
and
my God.
Karishma is struggling with the map.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that moment.
Oh my gosh. I was super emotional in last week's episode. I think it was just this sense of like, not frustration, but just a sense of like fear. Whereas this last episode, I think I had more peace, but
Mm.
last episode, it was a sense of fear because I grew up watching the show and this was literally my childhood dream. And I wanted to make it to the finish line. I was like, I could see us making it to the finish line because we are very like strong individuals. And we do like, we don't give up. And so it was so hard watching her get frustrated. And honestly, she had dehydration too. She was exhausted. She had massive dehydration. Again, we're not really eating on the race. So you're hungry, you're sleep deprived, you're tired. But yeah, I was very emotional because I should have done the challenge, but also it was really hard to watch her and not be able to help her. And then when I saw the firefighters come through, I was like, oh my God, like we have a chance, we have a fighting chance. And then they like sweep through it so fast. So that was like extremely difficult. And what they didn't show too was the challenge to the pit stop was almost a 2 mile run. Like it was a run, like it was a far run. And so, you know, the double dutch team ended up being like pretty far behind us, but in that moment we had no idea where they were. They could have finished right after us. And so in that 2 mile run, I remember we were so like on edge, which is why we were so emotional. We got to the pit stop because we were like, we have no idea where we are.
We talked about the prep that you would do physically for the race, but once you get there, it has to be, completely different than you really planned for.
Yeah.
What surprised you most about running the race?
What surprised me most, I think you can't underestimate anyone, if I'm being honest. You really can't. You have no idea what hidden skills or talents people have. And again, as much as it is a physical race, it is much more of a mental race because you could be the fastest person getting there, but you could be the last person leaving if you're not figuring it out. So you cannot underestimate teams. And I think we didn't necessarily do that, but there were a couple teams that we thought were like, oh, like we can beat them. And you don't know. You do not know.
Right. So then after each leg, because you guys get like really worked up, like you guys are
Yeah.
energetic ladies. What's it like at the end of the leg? How do you guys decompress together?
We do. I mean, at the end of the leg, honestly, we're just because you go straight to your interviews after. So you're at that point, you're hungry. So I remember we'd go back to the rooms after our final interviews and we would literally like order our food, eat our food, and we'd sit there. And there are moments where we'd both be crying or we'd both be just like, you know what, we're exhausted. We did our best. Most of the time, we would have some sort of debrief, either that night or the next morning, a debrief of what went well and what did not go well and what we needed to improve upon. So, like, that was really important. We also had our little notebooks as a super fan. I had my colored pencils in my notebook and I took like vivid, like very detailed notes of everything that happened that day in case we did make it to the end and there was a memory challenge or whatnot. Like, I just wanted to have everything written out to a T. So Karishma and I would actually sit separately, like in our different beds. We'd write out everything in our journals, respective journals. Then we'd compare notes to see if either of us missed something. So like that was really important for our recaps of the day. But then also we talk about like, maybe we should have done this, or maybe we could have been kinder. Maybe we should have swapped challenges. And like, I think that was good. And it's coming from like a sisterly bond, a sisterly love.
So in this last leg for you, by the time you're climbing, you're aware you're the last team. You're not seeing anyone else there, right? So are you kind of coming to terms with it
Yeah,
at this point?
I think that's why I was so emotional because like I went paragliding the last episode, but like I think the drama of the heights just like they added that. But a part of the reason I was crying was because we knew we were the last team and we were going home. And that's why we were so emotional. And like, even in the car ride to the pit stop, it's not necessarily shown, but we both were just very like, it was like a very like heavy heart. Like we knew we were
Mm-hmm.
last.
And then what
It's
is
so
it
hard.
like to just like step on that mat and hear the words from Phil?
Oh my God, it's heartbreaking. It was so, so, so sad. But again, I think in this episode, there definitely was more of a sense of peace compared to last episode. I think because we knew it was coming to an end, I was just proud of us. I think we were both really proud of each other. We did something that, like, not a lot of people can say they've done. And I think it takes a lot of guts to do something like that. And we can tell our kids one day, our future grandchildren. So yeah, it was a great experience and we did the best we could. And I'm really proud of her. Yeah.
Good. I mean, it's quite the feat just to be cast on the show. So many people never get
Yeah.
cast on the show. So be proud of yourselves
Yeah.
completely.
Yeah. I am. It's a huge accomplishment and it was a dream come true for me. Like I've watched this show since I was like, I don't even know, 6. So it was amazing to see it come to
And
fruition.
what was it like to have this amazing experience with Karishma?
I think it definitely we've always been close, but I think this really like solidified our bond in a different way because this really was like our greatest adventure we've ever done individually, but also like as a team. And it was just so special to do it with her and do it for her parents. And we made lifelong friendships out of this. Like we are friends with all of our castmates. Like we've gone on trips together. We've done so many things together, and I feel very grateful and I feel very lucky.
Well, that's very good to hear. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It was so great chatting with you. I hope you have a great rest of your day.